into our live here. If I can figure out, there we go. Which of the weeds?
Something didn't. Oh, and there we go. We're live on YouTube, and we're just connecting our live setup here on Facebook. And it looks like
I invited you.
I am coming into.
I'm going to turn down the volume on this.
Yeah, I'm muting the phone. Oh my goodness, I've got so many screens in front of me right now. Hi, Instagram.
Hello, Instagram.
We missed out on Instagram Live yesterday because we were lacking the tech savvy skills to get it going on. Alana, if you want to mute your phone entirely.
I think it is. Is that better?
Check 1 2 3. I can still hear me.
That's weird. I literally have the volume turned all the way down. How do I?
This is why people have tech support for these events, by the way.
I know, right?
Alana and I have like
20
things happening in front of us.
For the people that are watching, if there are people watching right now, if you have any tips on how to get the phone quieter than all the way down. Okay.
I know, right?
It keeps coming back up. Like on purpose, that I hear whenever I talk, it like turns it back on again. That's annoying.
So tech savvy. Hey Sierra, how's it going?
For real though.
Everyone gets to have double chin.
I'm just going to grab another set of headphones here and see if I can put that in, if that stops it, because it keeps, every time I speak, it turns the volume back on.
Smart.
It's going to be noisy while I do that.
Hey guys who are joining us on Facebook, thank you for being here. You're going to have to give Alana and I a hot second as we get some things situated here. We do have Instagram going also. Oh, yay! Thanks, Sierra. It helps okay from Sierra's perspective. So that's good on Instagram. Apparently they can hear us.
Can you hear me on Instagram?
Yes.
Sweet. Hacked it.
It's working. All right, today's live is going to be about the gene keys. I can still kind of hear me, Alana. I'm not sure what's happening, but I can ignore it.
Turn the volume down again. Maybe it's coming. My mic is so sensitive. It's like a blessing and a curse. I feel like I should be doing ASMR or something with it. Okay, I think that should be better. Try talking again, Mel.
Hello. Yeah, no, I didn't hear it that time.
Perfect.
So while we get situated, Alana, I have a few things to tinker with on this side, but do you want to start just chit-chatting about what the gene keys are in general? A bit of an overview for those people who maybe don't know.
Yes, so the gene keys are a beautiful synthesis put together by Richard Rudd, and I have my trusty book here. You can see it's well used. Basically, he put this together based off of the I Ching, which is a Chinese teaching that goes back millennia, and it's based off of 64 different kind of archetypes, and so he's kind of synthesized that in conjunction with human design. So it does kind of match up with the astrology. There are some parallels there, but it's a beautiful system that you can work with. Like astrology, you can get your own chart and your birth chart and see what gene keys were at the placement of your birth, so you can kind of get to know yourself. He has some beautiful programs that you can kind of go through as well that are kind of a way to approach the spiritual path, with just maybe from the mind. I don't know. It's like, I feel like a lot of spiritual paths, they kind of try to bypass the mind, but I think The Gene Keys is great because it allows us to kind of get the mind on board and kind of enter through that space. He is very much so a poet. The way he uses words is very, yeah, it's beautiful. I don't know how else to put it. But yeah, so we'll be going through the Gene Keys today. Along with, like astrology, they do change as time through the year goes by. So there's different Gene Keys for each week of the year. And we are going through on this forecast what that's going to look like for me. And so what are the energies we're going to be working with? With each Gene Key, there is 3 different areas to focus on. So there's the shadow aspect, which is going to be kind of the lower, more subconscious way that this shows up. Then we've got the gift, which is kind of the pathway through to get to the highest vibration. So again, he kind of like works with the polarities as well, which is very approachable. And then that is how our world is structured, through polarities. So yeah, we'll go through each Gene Key, what that means, how we could interpret that with what's coming up in the world, and how maybe you can work with these energies in a way that supports you in the coming month.
Yeah, that's a great
Anybody out there do Gene Keys?
Oh, hey, your mom's here. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom and Dad.
All right, so I am moving on from trying to get this live on Facebook. I've given up. Not today.
Okay.
Yesterday, no Instagram. Today, no Facebook. Apparently, we are meant to only stream on 2 platforms at a time. YouTube is definitely our trusty go-to, so if you were watching this replay and you're curious about how to catch our lives, I would suggest hitting us up on YouTube. And if you are wondering, welcome to our second live ever. We went live yesterday for the first time, and we went through May's astrological forecast. Normally, we cluster our forecasts into one long video that includes astrology, tarot, and Gene Keys. But we wanted to try going live so we have an opportunity to connect with people in a bit of a different way. And we wanted to be able to break these things down in a bit more of a bite-sized, more easily navigated, so you guys can get the information you're looking for a little bit quicker. So today's going to be all about the Gene Keys. Before we get going too far, a few announcements that Alana and I are trying to get a little bit better at remembering to do. We always get right into the conversation and forget that we have offerings and things going on. First up is the fact that we are currently accepting applications for our Once Upon a Mushroom retreat. It's coming up in July this summer, so that's very exciting. We also have a new segment on the Sacred Seat podcast, which I'm excitedly telling everybody about because it's called High Tea. So Alana and I sit down, consume and partake in the lovely plant medicine cannabis, have a good cup of tea, and do our darndest to answer some questions that get sent our way on the internet. We also give you copious amounts of opinions, way too many poorly executed accents, and a lot of giggles involved. So if you have not had an opportunity to check out The Sacred Seat, the first episode of High Tea is live right now, and it's very fun. Like I said a little bit earlier on, we are starting to go live the last week of every month to do our forecasts for the up and coming month. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, we have some live work to nail out here, but that's okay. On these streams, we will be trying to keep them to about 30 minutes. We'll see how that goes. Yesterday, we blew right past that and spent an hour on astrology. But there's a lot of stuff going on,
there
man.
was a lot, yeah. There was a lot of stuff. It's a big month.
Yeah, it's loaded.
Not that they've been big lately every month, so it's just the times.
Yeah, coming into 2024, everyone was like, yay, it's going to be the year of abundance. I'm so ready. It's going to be my year. I'm still on board with that, by the way. But the first few months have definitely been a little tumultuous.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
We can get started on the Gene Keys, I suppose. I think that's all of my announcements.
Perfect.
Anything else I missed?
Well, no, I think you covered them all. Did you talk about it at the retreat?
Yeah, we got Once Upon a Mushroom coming up. Oh, we have a How to Prepare for Plant Medicine course. It's online. It's a free offering. So if you're looking for, I know that it is plant medicine season and ceremony season is coming up here for everybody. Summertime is definitely usually, in the northern hemisphere at least, hardcore ceremony season. If you're wanting to have a free offering from Alchemia that might support you in your preparation process or getting into the right headspace to go and sit with ceremony or in ceremony rather, that offering is available. I think that's all of our announcements.
Yeah, it definitely is turning into ceremony season. It's funny. I feel like you can feel the vibration, the energy shift. People are like getting out there. We're getting more people that are, filling the seats for our retreat, which is awesome. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. And the ceremony prep course is a really good overview of like everything that could be considered when you're approaching that space. We're all about holistic thoroughness at Alchemia, that's for sure.
It's true. Oh, other
So
than
Mel,
that, I got a new mic, which I think is noteworthy because I just need to get this out of the
yes.
way. Oh, it's not letting me do it. Oh my God, are you kidding me?
What about now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry Instagram doesn't get to experience this, but I have a funny voice now.
It's a little evil. Sounds like she kidnapped somebody and she's asking for a ransom for those who didn't hear it. It's
if you want to
cute.
have that special fun effect, you're going to have to check out the YouTube live. But anyway, new mic, new toys. New year, new me. Let's get into it.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we had some good belly laughs yesterday with it. So Mel, tell me a little bit before we dive into the Gene Keys for this month. What are your thoughts on the Gene Keys?
Oh man, I think one of the ways, it's really hard to explain because it's a synthesis that combines so many different modalities, like studies that help us understand our energetic imprints of who we are as a human or when we come into this world, combines human design, the I Ching, astrology, and those systems in and of themselves you can spend years studying and diving into. I love working with the Gene Key structure in particular because it pulls on some really ancient traditions, and it also gives you a very clear masculine structure, masculine framework to have an opportunity to dive deeper into kind of like your internal realm, which I would consider more stereotypically feminine. It's not something that's very clear cut or easy to navigate, especially if you're going in there and working with some internal wounds or heavy emotional dynamics or ingrained patterns. There is really no clear cut roadmap for that. And I think what the Gene Keys provides, at least for me, is kind of an understanding of a way to move through some of the patterns we find ourselves in, some of those situations we are locked into. So that's one of the main gifts that I get out of the Gene Keys. It gives me a step-by-step way to kind of move out of an energy I find myself in or a pattern I find myself stuck in. It gives me like step-by-step comparisons and a bit of a masculine structure. So something I would consider a bit more of a feminine flow for me, at least.
Yes, that's such a good way of putting it. Yeah, and so like with this, we'll go through the Gene Keys each week. They do shift. And yeah, the invitation will be just to contemplate, just to feel into it. Notice how the shadow shows up. Notice how the gift shows up. Have fun with it, play with it, be curious. I think that's the biggest thing that he talks about is approaching this path with a soft and curious mind. It's not meditation. It's not hard study. It's like this middle way. It's like somewhere right in between. And it's like you get to thread the needle and find your way through and have some amazing openings through the transmissions as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we're ending the month of April. And starting the month of May with the Gene Key of the Shadow of Addiction, the Gift of Invention, and the City, which is the highest level that it can be. That's like kind of like the other side of the coin. The divine essence per se of this Gene Key is silence, and this is Gene Key 24. And I actually have this Gene Key in my chart, so I am quite familiar with it. And it's the dilemma of this Gene Key is the dilemma of gravity. And what he means by that is it's like the gravity of our lives, the gravity of our day-to-day, like, our rhythms. And we talk about this, I think, more specifically in Alchemia as like, when you go to ceremony, you have all these beautiful realizations, you make all these changes, and then you go back to your life, and the gravity of the mundaneness, the gravity of the day-to-day can pull you back into those old patterns because they are literally triggering these unconscious neural pathways over and over again. And so it's interesting because this is the shadow of addiction, and so we think of addiction more to substances, to physical things. And that is, a part of this gene key, a part of that shadow. But it's when I've been doing my contemplation, I found it to be a lot more due to our thoughts. And yeah, those subconscious patterns that keep flowing on autopilot over and over again, that keep us trapped, that keep us from receiving what we want to receive. And the way that we move out of that shadow, first of all, you have to be in it. This is with all the shadows, hey Mel, like you just got to be in it. But to get out of it, we have to there'll be a space at some point, and within that space, that gap between thoughts, that's when invention, the gift of invention, like just blossoms and arrives into your life. And so that's that fresh new energy. And oddly enough, it's like that vibration is what you're seeking when you're stuck in addiction. You're like, oh, one time I did this and it felt like this, so I'm gonna keep doing that thing over and over and over and over again to try and get the same result. But it's the freshness that created that vibration that you're seeking again. So it's like you're coming at it from the wrong angle.
I think it's something really interesting with the gene keys and viewing them this way, looking at the pulse calendar as they move just in the collective frequency, right? Just like with astrology, probably the easiest way to explain this. Everybody has a gene key chart, and then we also move through these frequencies collectively. And I think it's really interesting to watch, especially the shadow, in this shadow particular, the shadow of addiction. It has both a reactive and a repressive state. So basically, when this addiction is expressed externally or in a reactionary state, or when we repress it and it's often a little bit more internally focused. The reactive state is being anxious, and the repressive is being frozen. And for me, sometimes if I can't grapple with an idea of a shadow, if I look at the reactive and the repressive, it gives me a really clear kind of emotional state that I'm like contemplating, that I'm sitting in. And it's like, oh, wow, I need to figure out how to get out of here. Like, what am I going to do about it? Is it very much that reactive, anxious energy? Is like, how do I get out of here? And repressive is like, oh, I'm so here, I can't get out of it. I'm just going to like fawn and freeze and I'm stuck. But yeah, like you said, invention, it just seems to be like that tiny little break, that tiny little sliver of that cycle, whether that's an anxious cycle or a numb cycle that you kind of stay locked in. You have access to that invention, and then as soon as you can like get through that tiny sliver of light, it's such a pivot that can occur. And honestly, hanging out just as a human, hanging out in the gift frequency, let alone the acidic frequency, but just hanging out in that gift frequency and viewing the relationship between the shadow and the gift as a way to potentially shift from a denser frequency into a frequency that you can co-create with, work with, live through is it's really powerful and really kind of often subtle change.
Totally. And it's like interesting that you say that because for those especially I think that are new to the gene keys, a lot of the acidic states, the city states, the higher vibration states, they're almost like hard to even conceptualize. They're hard to like feel into until you've like really grappled between that like relationship between the shadow and the gift. And even then for me, maybe it's different for you. Sometimes the acidic states, they're kind of more fleeting, like they just kind of come and you're like, oh, that's what that is. And you get this big aha, and then you dive right back down into the shadow or the gift, and you're not really I haven't been able to hold that acidic state. And he talks about that, like the acidic states really, it's like the end of evolution, really, right? A lot of them, it's like that's where we're heading to as humanity, as a collective. And yes, for the acidic state for this one is silence. And so silence is like, it's like the absence of thought. It's the absence of like you're just being with what is, and you can have silence while you're doing. You can have silence. It's an inner state. It's like a beautiful lake. It's just that stillness kind of within. There's no thoughts, no words. It's hard to talk about silence, because the moment you talk about it, it's gone.
That's a good point. Sierra, if you're looking to get your chart, you can just go to genekeys.com, Alana, I think it is, and you'll be able to just get your free gene key chart. You will need to know your birth time. Same with astrological charts. You can look up, I think Astro Matrix is a good place. And you just need your city that you're born in and the time of your birth. And all of those charts you can get on the internet for free. So genekeys.com, and you can get your free gene key chart there. And then you can also find your astrological chart on the internet. Astro Matrix is a good one, or Astro Labs, I believe, is also another site that can give it to you for free. So you can get it that way.
Totally. Yeah, and like astrology, like we have our charts, but then there's, what we all move through, which is similar to astrology, is like those energies still affect us. So even for those who don't have this gene key 24 in their chart, I mean, this week, especially the end of April, starting of May, this is going to be some of the energies that are going to be surrounding us that we're going to be kind of working through as a collective, which is, a part of all of us.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So after we have gene key 24, what do we move on to? On May 3rd, it's the second gene key, hey?
The second gene key, which is gene key 2, the shadow of dislocation, the gift of orientation, and the city of unity. Also, for those who don't know, it's city is SIDDHI. It's not like a city, like a town. I get that question a lot whenever I talk about it, so just thought I'd clarify. But yeah, the second gene key is the dilemma of agenda. So it's like, inserting our will of how we want things to go on the world, in that, like, we don't really have any control over that necessarily. But it's kind of like this gene key is like, as you see it, so it changes. So as we acknowledge the fact that we feel dislocated, or the fact that we feel maybe like out of alignment in some area in our lives, that is actually what starts that an alchemical process that starts you to shift out of that state. So it's almost like subconscious stuff bubbling to the surface, and the moment you see it, it starts to change. But most people, the moment we see it, we kind of become reactive. So we're like, well, I see this problem, I'm going to fix it, I'm going to make it better. And that's where we get the reactive state of this shadow, which is regimented. We can become so regimented, like, okay, I'm going to control everything. If I control everything, it can't help but change. But the reality of this gene key is it's going to change regardless of whether you do that or not. So it's changing because it's coming to the surface, and we don't have control over that. And then, of course, the repressive nature is lost. So it's, not knowing what to do, where to go, and like, it's not having trust. It's like not being connected to source or that higher wisdom that, like, hey, now that I've seen this, it's changing. It's like, I've seen this and I don't know what to do now. That's kind of that lost vibration.
Yeah. Dislocation is such an interesting term to refer to this frequency of shadow. Like, it makes me think of just being disjointed. I often see like the struggle with expectations versus reality, fact and fiction, and just not really having like a clear bearing kind of show up for me, which I guess feeds into that repressive nature of this gene key being lost. And I can also totally, on a personal note, relate to the reactive nature of this. Is like when it's almost like that striving for a sense of control when things are not lining up, not quite working right. I just try to become really regimented. I'm like, okay, if I just do A and B and C, then I will get some type of, like, I'll get it, my orientation, I'll figure it out. Like, everything's going to start making sense. All the puzzle pieces are going to fall into place. And boy, oh boy, is that a wake-up call when you realize that it doesn't matter how regimented you are or how much control you like to think you have. When all of that goes away, it really goes away.
Oh gosh, totally. And the irony is like, you can't bypass this. Like, you have to go through the process of doing all those things. It's like that agenda piece is like, okay, well, I'm going to try and fix this. And it's like the real agenda, really, when you kind of, you do need kind of this agenda, which is that we want to align, and like holding space to that is like, then you can move, and like, yeah, like having some structure, having some regimentation is not a bad thing. But it's like, it's when these become extreme that they can become a little bit more, I guess, maybe pathogenic in our lives, or kind of keep us stuck in the shadow more. But yeah, with all gene keys, the only way out is through the shadow. It's like deeply accepting it. You can't like deny it. You can't be like, I'm gonna just skip over and go straight to the gift of orientation and just, I'm gonna not feel lost. I'm gonna not feel regimented. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna skip that. I've tried that and it just doesn't work. So that's been my experience. I don't know if you can speak to that, Mel.
Well, I think the perspective that Richard gives in regards to that a lot of the time is that these gifts are found in the shadow. That when we slow down and we stop trying to escape dense emotions, stop trying to label them as bad and negative and places we just don't want to be in, right? It's very human to not want to be in a place of discomfort. When we have the capacity to just take a breath and get our lateral thinking back on board, we're not stuck in fight or flight trying to get out or change or run away. This is reminding me of the previous shadow of addiction, by the way. when we're not just panicking to get the heck out of Dodge, and we have the capacity to sit and really be in the state and the emotion and the vibration that we're in, these gift frequencies, pathways through, little gems, little mental or emotional pivots can occur. And he really frames it in the way that these gifts are found within the shadow frequencies. This is not a system or a structure to avoid feeling dense emotions, but it is a system and a structure that enables you to move through those dense emotions and work with and cultivate tools that help you navigate that dynamic and eventually move through, elevate, and shift the way that you show up, no matter what frequency you're tapping into, I think.
Yes, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, it's through the shadow. I totally forgot about that. I love that. It's almost like the center of the Tootsie Pop, you know, like you gotta get there. You gotta do the work. The only way out is through, kind of energy. But yeah, then we move into the Siddhic realm of this one, which is unity, and you know, that's that oneness. Again, this is like kind of, a lot of them can be kind of etheric and kind of like hard to grasp, but it's like when we're in unity, we are in alignment. You know, we are in alignment with ourselves. We are in alignment with our lives. Things kind of flow. There's not this like, you know, you don't doubt your path. You trust that you're exactly where you need to be. You're oriented on your path, all is well. So that's how I view unity. Have I ever personally experienced unity? Maybe in conjunction with a couple other cities, but not like on the regular. I feel like my process is always, you know, dancing in and out of dislocation and orientation. And yeah.
In sacred plant medicine ceremony.
Yeah, exactly. That's the biggest place.
Felt unity.
Yes.
But I think it's really interesting for me, and of course this is just a path and a journey of contemplation, but to look at the relationship between the city and the shadow frequencies, right? So if you look at dislocation, if everything's one, you can't be lost, you know, like you know where you are. And it's just like such a cute little antidote. It's so very like, oh, the gift is in the poison or the medicine is in the poison kind of dynamic. So it's one of those things where I spend a lot of time looking at the gift and the shadow, but then I also just juxtaposition the city and the shadow. And I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this, but when you're trying to, like, for example, you can figure out what you don't want, and maybe you don't know what you do want. So I work with the polarity of things often. It's a tool in astrology as well. So if you look at one of the astrological signs, its characteristics are opposite of whatever the characteristics are of the sign that is directly across the sphere or the circle from it. So it's kind of a way to play them off of each other and get a bit of a clearer concept or image off of whether the Siddhic frequency or the shadow frequency by playing it off of the opposite. So it's one of those ways that I sink into a bit more of a contemplation around them if I'm struggling with one in particular.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. So yeah, this is the first week of May. You know, some contemplation questions could be like, can you really honor and sit with that helplessness that you feel about the direction in your life? You know, once you sit with that, you can allow that orientation to take its time and naturally emerge, not trying to force it, not trying to push it. So you're not, again, reacting or repressing that shadow nature, but sitting in that uncomfortable space of like dislocation of like, I don't know my direction. I don't feel aligned. And how many of us feel like that and can just like, you know, grab on to the next thing and maybe not sit with it, not allow ourselves to be in that uncomfortable space.
Or giving yourself permission to become unregimented in a life direction that you've discovered you have hated.
Yes,
I think if you're super strict to a path or direction in life, you have to give yourself permission to be like, yo, this doesn't feel great.
Yeah, totally. Gotta kind of allow that change to occur. So the next gene key that we are moving into, so this will be May 9th that week starting, is gene key 23, which is the shadow of complexity, the gift of simplicity, and the city of quintessence. I love that word, quintessence. And this is a dilemma of accumulation or timing. And so this shadow comes with an overwhelming urge to like express oneself. So it's like, I need to be heard. I need everybody to hear me and listen to me. And so the reactive nature is fragmented. So we can spend too much time trying to force our opinions on others, trying to force people to hear us. And then the repressive nature is dumb. So being silent is being keeping silent and not tolerating self-expression. And so you can almost see how this shadow plays out in today's world. I think especially on, social media, with cancel culture, with people, getting on their soapbox about different causes and like really forcing it down everybody's mouth. And the irony is like the more you push this, is like, I'm sure we've all experienced it. The more you or someone's pushing some sort of idea at you on social media, the more you're like, like get it away from me. And it's like, it kind of does you a disservice, really, right? It's like what you're talking about might be great and be pure, but like the energy behind it is very repelling. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the motivation and the energy behind what people do, like you said, really comes through. I think it also shows up when people use the phrase like, "This is a really nuanced conversation." It's like, okay, well then get into that or don't. Like engage or don't. This back and forth, like overcomplicating things. It doesn't have to be that complicated, y'all. The gift of simplicity, the gift of being able to be like, oh, this, like, God, I love that gift. Because if you are someone who overthinks, like, also welcome to the age of anxiety, welcome to the
Right.
age of panic attacks and I'm overwhelmed, even just on like in an everyday capacity, how much information we are bombarded with, especially with the internet, especially with social media. But the gift of simplicity, like there's a reason that farmers are some of the happiest people in the world. Grow food, eat food, share food, learn more about food. Like there are simple things to being human that can be very pivotal and very freeing. And I think a lot of the time we can really overcomplicate things. That shadow of complexity is really heavy to me. It feels really bogs you down.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see how the reactive state would be fragmented because you have all of this information. You don't really know where you stand. You don't necessarily know your own thoughts, your own opinions, or what your core stability and your core alignment. You're just spewing and regurgitating information and you're fragmented. Like, where's the you in that? You're just carrying all of this baggage of information and like, where's the actual, like, where's your truth? And then being dumb, like the repressive nature of this, people are going to hate the word dumb being used in this context, but that's fine. Like the repressive nature is like, oh, you'd rather just not engage at all.
Yeah.
Like,
or you feel, or even like you feel like you have no voice. You've been silenced.
Mhm.
I don't have a voice, so I can't engage. My voice isn't worthy, to be expressed. So I think that's another way that this can show up again with just like, I'm too small. I'm too small for this. What change can I make? Who's listening to me? Yeah. And it's like, kind of like a lot of the shadows, this one with its, kind of like the mind trying to control the environment again. It's kind of similar to like the last two, really, right? We can kind of see that common thread across the shadows. And I don't know, maybe you can speak to this. I feel like it's across all shadows, but then I'm like, maybe it's also because all of these are really close to each other in the month, and there's a bit more of like a theme kind of that emerges as they're closer together. I guess we'll find out as we go through more and more, but
yeah, I mean, so the Gene Keys is tied to astrology, right? So there's going to be like some specific themes that are tied through, and that's because, like, for example, we have Sun moving into Taurus, we have Venus moving into Taurus, and we have Mercury moving into Taurus later on in May as well. So there's going to be like underlying energetics, and I think that cyclical nature of it and things going through flow like that in the Gene Key pulse calendar also comes and has a relationship to astrology that way for sure.
absolutely. Yeah. And then of course simplicity is beautiful, but let me go into the city of quintessence. It's like, what is really quintessential? What do you really actually need to do in your life? All of those things that you make super complex, that you spend your energy on every single day. It's like, do you really need to do those things? Or are you just doing those things out of a sense of trying to control the outcome or trying to control something in your life to make you feel safe?
I think that can
what is
come
actually needed?
Yeah, I think that can come a lot from the sense of like obligation. We had this, my mom and I just had this conversation about being of service, right? And a lot of the time people be like, oh, wow, I need to help the collective, or I need to help and be a healer. I need to be of service. And it's like, okay, while you might feel that on one level, the how is not dictated. You don't
Yeah.
need to be of service by being a yoga teacher,
Yeah.
remembering quintessence feels like remembering that we are co-creators and there are laws and parameters and rules that can be bent, broken, altered. Not inciting revolution right now, but I kind of am.
Yes.
there's no like steadfast, hard, you have to or you can't not. There's just consequences for the things that you do or you do not do. So yeah,
Yeah.
you could do X, Y, and Z. You could. You could light a building on fire. You could X whatever. Pick a thing. Yes, you can. There's a consequence. Are you willing to accept that consequence? But it's this really subtle victim frequency when you say, "Oh, I have to." Oh, I
Mhm.
have to. It's disempowering. It's taking away your capacity of being a co-creator, showing up and owning who you are and how you move in this world and what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Gives you an excuse to play small. Oh, I have to do it. Mm, you just don't want to have to handle the consequences of not doing it or doing something different, right? Like there's layers that add into that, but I think reframing things that we actually have to do is an important conversation because it denies us a lot of our experience.
Oh, totally. And we had this conversation, I think, as well in our Gene Keys container, as well as like that little rebel that kind of comes out when you say you have to do something. I think well, I don't know if we all do, but I think most of us do from our little inner children. Is like, you tell me I have to do something, there's like instantly a part of me that's like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, if you can kind of reframe, like you said, into like, I get to do this. Or like if it's like I have to like not do this thing or something like that, it's like, what's the opposite of that? It's like, oh, I get to nurture myself, or I get to fill in the blank, really, right? And that it just changes ever so slightly into that, out of that victim mindset into an empowered space, really, right? Yeah.
Mm,
So that this week, the week of May 9th, contemplate that a little bit.
yeah. Get rid of the excess noise and figure out what
Yeah.
is quintessential for you, not just for other people or for
Mhm.
everybody. Like this is very an internal decision, right? It could be really subtle, but having that knowing and that understanding within yourself, being like, no, these like I need my family, like I need this sense of family, and this sense of family is quintessential to the way I show up in this world. That's important things to know. This is like establishing values and stuff, and that's not necessarily done with other people. That's an internal dynamic and a really powerful one when you start to get it in order.
Oh my goodness, yes. Actually, it's interesting because this Gene Key starts on the 9th, and I'll be heading into the jungle that week. And so I'll be
Welcome
definitely,
to the jungle.
right? I'll be narrowing down into the very, very quintessential, coming back to foods,
Mm-hmm.
abstaining from media, abstaining from a lot of different things. So it'll be right on point with the Gene Keys.
Yes, get you in the
But then we're
zone.
moving. Yes, exactly. Moving into May 14th, the week of May 14th, we will be shifting into Gene Key 8. And so Gene Key 8 is the shadow of mediocrity, the gift of style, and the city of exquisiteness. I like that word too.
Mm-hmm.
I like most of the Cytic words actually, but the dilemma of this one is imitation. So I think this is something that a lot of us can grapple with, especially in the world of social media, is trying to find what is our personal style, who are we, how do we present ourselves to the world, and we say imitation is the purest form of flattery, but we don't want a bunch of the same people out there.
Oh yeah, yeah, I hear you.
And then that leads into the that reactive nature of this shadow, which is being artificial. So pushing out into the world what you want to project, and often this is an illusion. And though it might look good and it might look like all the things that are popular right now and on point, there's a vibration behind something when it's unique and it's being true to itself, and it's like a pure transmission from your being and your soul. That's what. It's not the fact that like this person has eyebrows done like this, or they wear their hair like that, or they do this, that, and the other thing. Like that's not what's going to make you like somebody else. It's the fact that they're just being true to them, and that's the vibration you're drawn to, really, right? So we're trying to like imitate it from the superficial aspect. It's like, oh, if I look like that, maybe fake it till you make it, maybe I'll become that. And I think there's a little bit of a dilemma in itself as well too, is like we have to kind of imitate in order to sometimes try things on, and like, is this me? What do I like this, really, right? But yeah, the repressive nature is to be wooden, which is like an interesting term. Like, oh, what does that even mean? So to be wooden would be like to be devoid of life force and just following the crowd, just collapsing inward and not really like going with the flow. I kind of see this a little bit as like lemming syndrome, maybe a bit. Yeah, just kind of doing the things because you're supposed to do the things and you don't know what else to do, and you kind of don't really feel connected to you. Maybe you're missing you and you want to figure out who you are. And I'm most of us, I don't know. I thought when I turned 18, I'd be like, I know who I am. I'm an adult. Everything's great. Yeah, it's just like not really how it works though.
No, I hear you. I think, okay, sorry, you said imitation is like the greatest form of flattery or something like that, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
you look up that saying, like if you look up the origins of that saying, it's something, I have to paraphrase it, sorry, because I couldn't find it in this brief conversation, but imitation is the sincerest form of flattery that mediocrity pays to excellence. So there's a whole other part of that saying that literally ties in the shadow of mediocrity. Um,
Perfect.
yeah, it's a really wild. I love quotes and sayings like that because so often we get half of them.
Yeah, I butchered them too. So.
I have the
Yeah.
programming partner for Gene Key 8, and mediocrity's programming partner on a shadow frequency is compromise. And I think mediocrity in combination with compromise is one of the biggest things that holds humanity back collectively as a whole. And I vehemently have a problem with it because probably it's in my own chart, but it's something that so irks me because no matter what you do, no matter how you're imitating, the dilemma of imitation, you're not the original. So there is distortion. It is
Mm-hmm.
mediocre compared to the authentic download or that one true divine spark alignment where that came in first into the world, where that came in as the initiatory fresh gift of beauty kind of thing. Anything less than that is imitation, and imitation in comparison to pure divine channeled light, goodness, fresh beauty is mediocre at best. And then
Mm-hmm.
that mediocrity, especially if we're applying this to people and we're looking at people, we are trained as individuals in a society and sculpted and raised almost to make thousands and thousands of compromises that box us into that box of mediocrity. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. I'm gonna compromise on this because I want my water dragon to be blue, but my art teacher is gonna fail me if it's not red. I'm going to have a compromise here because you're shifting and you're changing these really subtle things that are pivotal to your expression or pivotal to who you are. And while some of them are important, and Richard Rudd refers to those as like those external compromises as opposed to like fundamental internal compromises on your values and your core structure of who you are, all of that anchors in the frequency of mediocrity because it's holding the status quo.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and it's
mm,
it's also like that's like you said, it's like, to step into your style, that's a scary thing because it's often not accepted by society. It's like
mm,
people are like, "Ooh, who is she to step? Who's she to do that? Who is she to step out of line? Like, why? Who does she think she is?" And that's like but you do it anyway. When you step into your style, you do it because it feels good to be you. And
yeah.
that's the gift of this one, really, right? Is like that feeling, that good feeling that you get of aligning to who you are and allowing you the flowering of your essence to come through. That outweighs all of the criticism, all the judgment, all of the mediocrity that's trying to push you down and form you and shape you to be something that you're not. It takes
Yeah, it
courage.
also Yeah, it's that comfort zone, that safety net of mediocrity. If I just stay here, I don't have to risk anything. But it's very Aquarian energy for the astrology
Mm.
people who are watching. And I have to speak to the fact that like the relationship between exquisiteness and style, there's a little bit of eccentricity and obliviousness because you become like, it's not a conscious, intentional thing per se to be like, oh, I'm going to make sure I'm doing me and I'm different than you and this is my style and I'm an individual. It happens really naturally when you step into that heart space and you allow your authenticity to flow. It's not an intentional separation from a status quo. It's that the authentic you is pouring through your experience and your physical self here on this planet Earth of ours, and you don't have any choice but to express in great amounts your exquisiteness and your style and like this zest for you for life, because it can only be exquisite when it's channeled through purely like that and not controlled or shaped. That's what makes it a acidic frequency. That's the transition between just being brave enough to have some kind of independent style or alternative way of moving or existing or thinking, and it tips the scale into exquisiteness when we become natural. It's that naturalness to it, right? And it's beyond conscious control or thought or manipulation. It just becomes the way we move is a channeled version of art.
Yes, I love that. A channeled version of art. Um, yeah, this is yeah, like you said, exquisiteness is really just like, you know, stepping into who you are, being that vibration, claiming your space as the whole. And yeah, that exquisiteness is a pure vibration. It's like a pure channel of your beingness, of what you're meant to express in this world. So this week of the month, which is what week is it? May 14th.
14th. Yeah.
You know, ask yourself, you know, like, can you give yourself permission to step outside of your comfort zone and just be who you really are? Like, you know, what does that look like?
What is, yeah, getting out of your own way.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
That hollow
Letting
bone,
yourself
you know?
emerge, letting yourself flower, like a flower blossoms, you know, in its own time. Sometimes I hate that saying, but it's true.
I know. It's like there's sayings that have lasted the ages for a reason, but they also make you want to put your head through a wall. You're like,
No,
okay,
I'm a
great.
force it. What are you talking about? Burst those petals open.
I know, right?
So then on May 20th, we'll be moving into Jinki 20. So Jinki 20 is the city of superficiality, the gift of self-assurance, and the city of presence. So this is the dilemma of absence. And when they say that, they mean it from like being absent from your self-awareness. So you're absent kind of from yourself. You're not being aware. Maybe you're kind of just in autopilot. You know, things are kind of operating at the unconscious level. Then we move into the reactive side of this, of the shadow of superficiality, which is hectic. So, you know, you're going into the mind again and you're thinking too much. And this is preventing consciousness from actually entering into your physical form. You're actually kicking it out. And the repressive nature would be absent for this one. So those are people that, like, you know, they appear kind of distant in their eyes. They're just like not really there. They're kind of like, like kind of spacey, kind of out of it. And usually, like, again, this shadow frequency is not like, you know, you're in it, but like we see that often come from like really intense traumas in life. So this is almost like that freeze state as well. A lot of the repressive natures are kind of like the freeze state when we're talking about like the different fight, flight, freeze, fawn, the different spectrum of the nervous system. The reason why we repress this is because life's too intense to feel. So I just am not going to feel into my body. You know, how human is that? And we can get stuck in those states sometimes, like any shadow. We can get stuck in the shadow and we can struggle to get out. But we move into the gift of self-assurance. And that's like, it's interesting because it's like, he talks about it being like divine relaxation. It's like when you're self-assured, you're relaxed in yourself.
Yeah, there's that level of trust is what I feel like when I hear the term self-assurance and relaxation. You're like, oh no, okay. I might not know what's going on, but I trust my capacity to figure it out.
Totally, right? Yeah, and when you look at the like the cities or the gifts and the shadows even of the last previous gene keys, it's kind of like, you know, like if it's in your awareness, it's already being figured out. It's kind of that simple, you know, like you're already working with it. You don't need to force it. You don't need to push it. You don't need to expend excess energy trying to force it to be different. When you're self-assured, you know, there's no resistance. And I really feel this one because with the hypnotherapy work that I do, I work a lot with people with chronic pain. And sometimes, honestly, sessions can just be me guiding them back into the body. It's just like, you know, feeling the resistance, like feeling like literally the resistance to inhabiting a place of your body for your consciousness to be all the way filling your whole body, all the way down to your toes and your feet, and to feel that you're full of your consciousness. Most of us have cut off our consciousness like here, and we're just like, we just live in the mind, and that's like that is our authority. It's just our mind. But the mind is so, it's like, it's not broken. It's a computer. It's a dick. Yeah, it's a dick. It's zeros and ones. It's yeses and nos. It's black and white. It doesn't leave space for all the nuance. And when we embody the rest of our body, when we fill up our body, we have all this other resource, and like there's genetic information. There's you know, wisdom that lies within our cells. You know, our body stores trauma, which can be, I know it sucks to go into it, but like can be mined for little gems within our body. You don't have to go outside of yourself for the spiritual journey. You know, I would argue, and for me specifically, it's been it's a very internal process. It's going into the body, going into the physical form.
Yeah, I hear that. I like the fact that this is the week of May 20th, which is also Gemini season. And when I look at the reactivity and the repressive agents involved in GQ20, the reactivity being hectic and the repressive being absent. Gemini is an air sign, right? It's very cognitive. It's ruled by Mercury. So this is the mind. Cognitive upon cognitive, very cold cut, very masculine, and very quick. And when we are reactive and we are moving, that's hectic. And that is, like you said, locking ourselves into our heads. There's sayings that exist around this, like get out of your head. Oh, you're really in your head about this, or the overthinking dynamic. I think superficiality, self-assuredness, and the dilemma of being stuck in the head, or being entirely absent is the same thing as being stuck in the head, because when you're entirely absent, like you said, you're so trapped running in literal hamster loops. Like, again, it's the age of anxiety. You're literally running in hamster loops in your brain, but you're not showing up. Like you're not touching base. You're not connecting in. Where are you in any of that? You are not your mind. It's a fundamental principle in the way I think we approach spirituality, which is not for everybody. Is that you're not your mind. You're not your thoughts, and you're not even your emotions. You're the person. You're the essence. You're the consciousness that experiences both of those things. So when he talks about superficiality and the dilemma being absence, that you-ness, you're not even giving yourself a chance to show up. And that is, like we talked about, really deeply tied into those trauma responses, or just that innate feeling of being unsafe, out of our depth. And it's very anxiety inducing. So this is very timely. I really see its relationship with Gemini season coming in on the 20th of May. And I think it's a big shadow that we're dealing with. Superficiality. Look at social media. Look at the way we interact with each other. How easy it is to have these sound bites of, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm good, thanks. And like, no one's in that statement. No one's showing up in that conversation. Like, where are you? Like, you see all those memes and all those jokes about people walking around with their faces in their phones. Take away the phone, people just aren't even showing up in their own body, in their own selves, let alone face to face with someone else. This isn't even bringing in another person in relationship. This is just you.
Yeah. It's almost like you were just too scared to go on the adventure of life. It's just like, I'm just not going to engage. I'm gonna just do it. I'm just going to numb out. I'm just going to go through the motion. And it's interesting when you think about like consciousness coming into physical form, is like we experience consciousness separately. Like our consciousness is who you are, but then when we zoom out even further, like consciousness is one. It's that oneness. It's the overarching universe, God. It permeates through everything. And so that's what I love about the Siddhic frequency of this. It's the city of presence. Is he talks about when we get to the oh, excuse you. You're choking on
I
your
tried
water,
so
though.
hard not to do that.
Oh man, let it out.
It made it so much
but
worse.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, he talks about that once you get to this higher level and you've kind of fully embodied consciousness into your being, that separateness in consciousness ceases to exist. And he uses the example of bees or ants and how they kind of have this like hive mentality. They like share a consciousness. It's like, we don't have to communicate because like we're just like operating as one. And so it's kind of a cool maybe thought to have, like, maybe that is what we are evolving to as we embody more into our physical form as humanity. Maybe one day that will be a truth. Maybe we'll just be telepathic. We'll just be connected completely to everybody and totally aware of that.
I don't think everyone could handle my brain,
Oh my gosh. Totally
it's not always nice in here.
So yeah, for this week of the month, how can you let your mind rest on that note? And how can you allow consciousness to come deeper into your being and your body? This is where somatic work is really great. Doing your breath work, stretching, doing your yin yoga, being in nature. How are you resisting what's actually there? Like, how many times a day do you sit in front of your computer and you you rub your neck and it's sore and you don't really do anything about it? You just ignore it and then go deeper into your computer. Like, hello, I do that all of the time. How can you maybe pause and really sit with what's there? Maybe you can't in that exact moment, but you make time, you carve out time to be in your body, to come more into your body. And it is counterintuitive. Like we talked about, the nervous system responses, those freeze responses, those fight responses, those flight responses are forcing you or trying to force you in a different direction.
Yeah. A lot of the time we are forced out of our bodies and it's far beyond us. It usually happens at a very young age, and then we develop this as a coping strategy to intense situations. And it doesn't always feel fair. It doesn't always feel nice to acknowledge the fact that, hey, this really has nothing to do with me, but now I have to spend conscious, intentional time training myself to not do this thing. I love what you said, though, that self-assurance is the divine relaxation, and I feel like that's going to be my focus for the month is what is divine relaxation, and it so ties into trust, and you can't really do that if you are forced out of your body, right? Like there's a lack of trust in the universal experience of the human experience. You're not anchored into your physical presence, and I think that's what self-assurance really feels like, is that divine relaxation of being able to sink into the moment, being able to trust whether you're new to it or not. It's something I would encourage practicing on that week of just being present and taking things as they come. It's a big ask, but it's definitely potent.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. There's just so many juicy contemplations this month. And I mean, every month I love the Gene Keys for that reason, though. But yeah, I'm definitely going to focus on that divine relaxation. Such a beautiful way of putting it. And that it is like this self-assurance is like when you relax, you're in your personal power. And I don't think my mind doesn't often like associate the two always. Like I'll be like, oh, I need to trust. And I'm like really in an intense state. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to trust. I trust. And it's like, no, like it's a vibration. You got to come back into the
Yeah,
vibe.
that tension.
Feel all that. Yeah. Totally. Oh, you're buffering there, Mel. Come back. We'll give her a couple seconds here, guys, to see if. Oh, there you go. She's back.
Oh, I thought it was you. I
you
froze. You froze.
We all froze. Little glitch in the matrix. All right. So then at the end of the month, we are finishing off on May 26th with Gene Key 16. So this is the shadow of indifference, the gift of versatility, and the city of mastery. And this is the dilemma of laziness. So the reactive side of the shadow of indifference is like being self-deluded. So you get lost in the structures that we like believe in them so much to the point that we forget why they're there in the first place. This reminds me kind of like what a lot of the structures are, the people that are just like really resistant to change, that don't want to change, that want things to be kept the way they are, the traditionalists, and it's like, yes, tradition is great if it's still serving the same purpose. But I love that this kind of invites into the space as like, we can ask, like, what was the purpose of this? Is it still working? Is this old way of doing things still serving us? So you can kind of question that from that space. And the repressive side of this shadow is being gullible. So these are victims of mass propaganda. These are people that like look at the media and they just like, they believe it hook, line, and sinker. And it also fosters a feeling of like powerlessness. It's like, I'm too small to help the world. If the government can't figure out how to feed the homeless, then who am I? Who am I really, right? And so then you just kind of collapse in on yourself again in that repressed nature. And you don't do anything. You don't try anything.
Yeah. Indifference feels like the banality of evil. It is. Yeah, it's evil men do things out there, sure, but good people who allow evil men to do good things are a problem. That indifference. I'm like, oh, if it's not my problem, it's not in my backyard, it's not directly affecting me, if it's not self-centered in a way. I just mean that like very literally. I don't mean that in the psychological perspective. I just mean like if it's not affecting someone's life immediately, it's so easy to become indifferent to it. And that's a very sneaky shadow frequency because I think we're very indifferent to many different aspects of our own psyche a lot. Yeah. I'm really just indifferent to how I show up here, or if I do achieve, or if I do care, if I do foster these types of relationships. Being indifferent in your internal dynamic, I think, is one of the scariest ways that I see that show up, because it is being gullible to the lies you've told yourself about yourself, being powerless, and experiencing powerlessness. It really locks in very conveniently for a select few very rich people. It locks in that victim frequency. It really keeps you disempowered because you just don't care. And it's more comfortable to just not care than it is to have to face that discomfort and that dis-ease of having to figure something out, of having to be new, having to challenge your thought processes, having to become versatile, having to stretch your wings and ask questions and engage that curiosity and risk being wrong or risk being laughed at, different, like we just talked about, being having your own style, or you're in the previous gene key there. But that's big risk, that's big scary, and it's easier to be indifferent.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned like kind of this like victim mentality, because it is such a victim mentality, but it's almost like this one has like, you know, in the victim triangle, this one kind of has a bit of the flavor of like the enabler. Like you said, it's like, oh, like I can't do anything. I'm just going to let it happen. You know, I'm going to let all the bad things in the world happen. And, you know, I mean, let's be honest, the world's pretty intense out there. It's like, we can't feel it all at once. But so that indifference, I feel like almost is a bit of like a protective mechanism, kind of much like the nervous system responses is, you know, like we can't process it all. So we need this shadow almost. And through the shadow, we find the gift of versatility. Oh, I just wanted to read this quote really quick that was part of the reading, which I thought was really potent. It's by Elie Wiesel. The opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference. The opposite of art is not ugliness, it's indifference. The opposite of faith is not heresy, it's indifference. And the opposite of life is not death, it's indifference. So I was like, oh, that's so potent when you put it that way, when it's put that way. Because it just keeps you from perceiving that higher reality, really, right? Indifference does. It's like it keeps you locked out of living your life. You know, again, you don't leave your comfort zone. You keep stuck. And you're also focusing your attention on that inessential. So that brings back, you know, bringing back to the simplicity and the quintessential piece as well. And there's, yeah, like you said, that diffusion of responsibility, which is just super huge, which is just like, looking away when encountering someone else's distress because it makes us uncomfortable and we do feel powerless to it. But the opposite of that isn't always like, you know, engaging with it or like helping necessarily. It's just feeling it. It's like feeling that, like that urge to not want to feel that, even that indifference.
Yeah, I think indifference sounds so passive that it's shocking when you start to contemplate it, to see how destructive of a shadow indifference is. This one causes a lot of problems, a lot of deep pain, and a lot of, I think, collective suffering comes from a place of indifference. I think, too, it makes me think of, this might be a very niche example, but it makes me think of teenage boys in high school when they're too cool to care. Well, guess what being too cool to care results in? You're failing English because you're being cool doing this. This is not exclusive to teenage boys, but I have a specific example I'm referencing here. But like when you're too cool to care, the quality of your experience on this planet, because you don't care, you're indifferent, whatever, that's just like, man, that just kind of pisses me off. It's kind of
interesting that it goes with coolness, you know, like it's like, but yeah, you're right, totally. It's like,
well, because like, if you deeply care about your grades, like people have been attacked. Like I've seen people be like viciously abused or bullied in school. Is a really easy way to see this, because it's such a microcosm of life, because you're forced into these little boxes with humans and you have to coexist, right? To see people like, oh, someone really cares about this, like that's like ammunition for bullies. Like, oh, you really care about your art project? Someone decides, like, then you attack the thing that person cares about because it makes them vulnerable. They're showing up in their own life. You show that you care, you're being vulnerable. Someone has a way to get to you, like the actual juicy you, whether that's art or English, or you want people to know that you care about the way that you look. Like I remember going to school and I cared about how I looked, but I would want to look pretty without having people be able to tell that I looked pretty. So I would never like wear too much eye makeup. I'd just be like, oh, I just woke up like this, right? Like it breeds such little sneaky, insidious deceptions and like weird little pivots, because I don't want people to think that I care. Because if people know that you care, they have access to a part of you. They can see part of you that's showing up, your care, your heart, there's an essence, there's something that's in there, you know? And as soon as you do that, you become vulnerable. And I think that just scares the shit out of people. Hence,
oh my gosh, yeah,
the very prevalent shadow of indifference.
Totally. And like, then what happens when you do care? It's like when you do care, there's like a pain almost, because again, you feel that powerlessness. You feel all of these things, and that's an uncomfortable place to be. And then at some point, you find your versatility, which is the gift of this one, really, right? It's like you find the skill that is going to help you. And versatility is a really cool one, because he talks about it being kind of more in the realm of sustainability, that like our being and our body and humanity like is our greater body. So each and every one of us is like, the earth, we're all part of this whole big ecosystem. And sustainability is really just like being in flow, being efficient, self-sustained living, us taking responsibility for what we've done is like, or what we haven't done, which is like, you see that in the climate change and how the earth is doing. And we see that biggest there is like, how many of us still use plastic baggies and do all these things, and and we're kind of like, like it's just indifferent, I'm just going to deal with that later, like I'm too small to make a difference. And we do kind of that kind of indifference there too, right? But yeah, when we sit with that discomfort, at some point it's going to emerge that there'll be a solution from that. It's like, there's a way to help at some point. And maybe it is just being kind and being nice, or holding someone's hand when they're going through a really tough time, or sending aid over to a country in need that needs it. It's just the little things, but we can, like, as we kind of develop these skills, we find like these new inventions for humanity that will just save us. I love the saying is like, we're only a couple inventions away from like solving all the world's problems. If we solve hunger, we solve energy. Is like, there's a lot of the earth's issues, really, right?
Yeah, and I think sustainability can be taken so many ways. Versatility, sustainability. I have a lot of this energy in my chart, and I really I see it as like a way to continue to persevere as well, right? So you deeply care about something, and it's like, yeah, you talked about how that opens you up for disappointment and pain, right? It's like, I really care about this, and therefore I'm really invested. And when you're invested, you're invested usually in some perceived end product. And then you get that disappointment or that pain when things don't turn out the way that you think they ought to, or the way you're hoping, or the way you're dreaming them to. And versatility and sustainability for me, in order to be sustainable, you have to be versatile, because you have to be able to attack the problem or the creative project or the situation from many different angles. And they kind of just feed each other and grow from each other. It's like, okay, if you want it to be sustainable, you have to have multiple inputs. You have to have different ways of approaching this. You have to be able to come back again and again and pivot and change. And they are very like collaborative energies, and they give you that continuing power, right? It's like, oh, I really care about this, and what I'm doing isn't working. It's not that I've failed. It's that something is stuck. Something is not moving forward. I need to become versatile in my approach. And that really leads to that mastery city, that ability to continue to try, to continue to learn, to continue to pivot, that enthusiasm, like that want, that desire, that human push to do, it's not quitting when it gets hard because you care. That's what this can really unlock, I think, and what I've really experienced in my life is versatility and sustainability. It gives me the capacity to keep caring, to keep trying, to become a master, and to succeed eventually.
Yes, I love that. It's this mastery one is like, once we get to that point, is like you said, it's like that versatility. You've seen it from so many angles. It becomes so holistic that now, like, all of a sudden, oh, look, there's a new application. Oh, look, it's like, I get this. It's now a part of your being. It's like a leveling up that occurs. It's like, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to try so much. You just like go in and you do the things and you figure it out. And I think it's a great example for you as somebody who homesteads, like you're like juggling a lot of things all of the time, and you're pivoting because of environmental factors and things that arise. And it's a cool one. I hadn't really contemplated this one a lot. But yeah, it's definitely one that I am definitely contemplating more now.
They are not programming partners, but this one really has a similar flavor to one of my gene keys, which is the gift of competency.
Yeah.
Versatility and to be competent. Capable, right? And it's just what do I have at my disposal? How do I make this work? And it's just like that human drive to continue to learn and grow and do. And the mastery comes, the bounteousness comes, which is the civic frequency of whatever I just said. What word did I just say? Competency. There we go.
Competency. I was like, what was it?
Like, I just blanked hardcore. But yes. It's
ahead.
definitely it gets you closer to getting the job done. That's for sure. It's a good mental, like it's a good mindset to hold, to play around with. This is something that can unlock a lot of energy for your projects. I think that you've cut yourself off of, because you know what, like that inner 5-year-old in you, they care, and you're just mentally pretending to be indifferent. It might not be you care
Mm-hmm.
about everything, but like there's an inner child in you who's like deeply invested and they really care. And when you deny them that, you're layering a level of abandonment, self-abandonment on top of the dynamic you're already working with, you know?
Yeah, and I think this, like, for a contemplation, I think for that time of the month is like, are there any passion projects that you've been putting off, or that you have maybe put on the back burner, things you used to enjoy that you can look into and maybe feel through that shadow of indifference that you've been kind of into, and lean into that gift of versatility, and just playing with it, just having fun, just getting your hands dirty, putting your hands in the mud, painting, drawing, running,
And
whatever it is you're trying to project you're starting to start.
yeah, and I would say I would add to that it's not about hanging on to the destination that you're perceiving or idea or dreaming of. It's about really falling in love with the process and the work that you're doing to get there,
Yes.
because that doesn't exist yet. The idea you have in your head of the way something has to turn out, this thing that you believe is going to exist, is not real yet. But what's real is what you're working with right in front of you. You can hold that vibration, but pay homage and pay attention to what is alive for you in this moment. And that gives you that opportunity to be present in the moment, have that versatility, and have that lateral thinking to be able to come at a problem more sustainably, more diversely, with more ideas, with more energy, with more enthusiasm, because you're right here. All of you is right here in the present moment. You're not comparing it to what you think it ought to be, because that doesn't exist yet. It's really centering your awareness and your intention back into the moment and being versatile with that lateral dynamic, and things really unravel for you and there's a lot more wiggle room when you can do that.
Yes, I love that. That's such a good way of putting it. Yeah, so that takes us through the month of May for the Gene Keys. It's a pretty nice looking month. There's some beautiful gifts and cities to be moving into, and energies to work with.
Yeah, it was lovely. Thank you so much to everybody who joined us, whether you're on YouTube Live or Instagram Live. One day we'll be able to do Facebook, YouTube, Instagram all at the same
All
time
three.
without me becoming overwhelmed and quitting on one of them. I will get more versatile. There we go. But yes, thank you so much for bearing with us too as we figure out our second ever live stream. It was really awesome to be able to sink into the month of May's Gene Keys. If you missed the beginning of the live stream, I will quickly remind you before we sign out here that we have our Once Upon a Mushroom Return of the Inner Child retreat that is going on in July. Applications are open for this retreat right now. So if you're looking for more information about that, check out the show notes below, or you can chat to one of us, send us a message. We also have our free online offering, How to Prepare for Ceremony with Plant Medicine, which is also available right now. That is timely, as it tends to be ceremony season in the Northern Hemisphere coming into summer. So if you are looking for some information to support you in that process, by all means, check it out. It's free. We also have probably my most exciting announcement. We have a new segment on the Sacred Seat podcast. It's called High Tea, where Alana and I sit down with the intention to connect and communicate and answer questions for our online community. And we partake in good old plant medicine, cannabis, and tea. It's very casual. It's very sitting around in a circle with your friend energy, and it's been a blast so far. It's been received really well. Our first episode is live on YouTube as well as on Spotify, so you are more than welcome to join us there. We also have one more live coming up tomorrow, where we will go and dive into a bit of a tarot forecast for May. Our intentions with going live would be to go live the week before the next month, or the last week of every month, I should say, to do the energetic forecasts for the month to come. We have been, up until now, combining astrology, gene keys, and tarot in a very long video on YouTube. And we thought it would be awesome to provide it in a little bit shorter segments where you guys can get strictly astrology information, gene key information, or dive into the tarot spreads with us. So we're giving this a go. Let us know if it is something that you enjoy, and we'll get a little bit better after we practice going live here. We'll smooth out some kinks and hopefully be able to get this rolling. In the meantime, good luck with May. May the force be with you. And if you guys want to catch our live tomorrow, it'll be around the same time, 4:35, and we will be getting into some tarot.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, guys.